Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Brahmanandam Param Sukhadam Kevalam Jnana Murtim Dvandvatitam Gagan Sadrisham Tattvamasya Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Om. Adorations to Brahman, giver of supreme bliss, embodiment of pure consciousness, one without a second, vast as the ether, infinite, eternal, beyond the three gunas and their modifications, the supreme precept. Yoga Vasistha in Upashama Prakarana, spiritual inquiry, practiced by Uddalaka, and that's section 52. Through this episode of Uddalaka, you are being given the art of practicing affirmation. In spiritual practice, your mind and heart must open to the understanding of the highest goal. And its entry is like a dramatization of you have attained the goal. Sit back and do. Your goal is realizing Brahman. So now your affirmation is, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am the eternal self. And all those subtle details, leading your mind to have that type of a general view of what future opens to you. Again, allegorical language. So Uddalaka is practicing it. First he has gone into deep relaxation, meditation, and he has created a mental environment of sattva. And he is now continuing with, O dull-witted senses, continue to perform your functions. In the beginning, senses and you are one and the same. Now you are distancing from the senses. And you are recognizing the senses lead you astray most of the time. And yet you can't exist in the world without the senses. Any of your sense becoming deficient affects your whole happiness of life. One sense gone, 1/5 of the world enjoyment gone. Two senses gone, 2/5 will be gone. So senses play a tremendous part. That because they play such a tremendous part, should you be a slave to those senses? Yes, general masses are. Happiness in life is interpreted in the terms of how much you have seen, how much you have experienced, how many things you remember. But all these are based on your sense perception. But now you are seeing yourself playing the role of master of the senses, not a slave to the senses. So allow now, as if you are talking to the senses are lined up here. And you are their boss. We are scolding them. Oh, dull with senses, continue to perform your functions. When you are freed of the pressure of vasanas here refer to malina vasana. Senses are excited constantly based on your subtle desires, and they go out of your control because you yourself don't know your subtle desires, and senses know them better than you. So they start jumping around without waiting for your approval. And you fall for it. So now you are the boss and you are talking to your senses. They are sitting there, kids, getting bored by your by your talk. And now, stern, scolding remark that he is going to promote purity of vasanas. And once the malina vasana is not goading the senses, impure vasanas are not prompting the senses, what will happen to you, you senses? You will become tame. You will not know where to jump around. So looking at me to give you guidance. You will not cause the karmic entanglements leading to the endless miseries of the world. So all your degrading actions will not be possible. O senses, you have become simply, you have simply imagined happiness in the objects. First point to being informed to the senses, that happiness is not in the objects. Think of your senses, one simple illustration. Your spoon, your sense, suppose spoon is a sense. It is not the spoon that tastes the soup. It is taking it. In itself, it is not enjoying anything. Holding back to that simile, simply to understand that when senses bring certain objects to you, saying they are wonderful, the spoon begins to say it's a good soup. There is a state of stupidity. So the idea that senses can perceive what is really joyous. What is happiness? That idea is illusion. O senses, you have simply imagined happiness in objects. Children create toys out of clay and grieve when they are destroyed. Sometimes they create clay, even create toys, even without the clay. They are sitting in their room on the bed. I have created castles in the air. And mother suddenly scolds, it's time for bath. Breaking down those castles of air is a terrible experience to a child. World of senses is in the same predicament. It's a childish involvement. If your happiness lies only with the plan, where should I go, whom will I be meeting, what will be the experiences, what will be the chit-chat, how far back the stories go. All these are expectations of the senses. Good things to hear, good things to taste, good things to see, good things to touch, good things to smell. If that is your world, and that is where you are looking for perfection, you are just a child. Happiness is not in the objects of the world. Happiness, source of happiness is the self in you. Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. For the sake of self, all becomes dear. Only to the extent you recognize it is your very self. To that extent, you begin to feel joyous. But your concept of self itself is deceptive. So, your understanding of happiness depends upon how you view yourself. If you view yourself as body, then of course, only body-related relatives are near and dear to you. If you view yourself not confined to the body, but your feelings, and you're in a different world of different human values, now any field that gives you the opportunity for experiencing charity, generosity, and some other type of good feeling, that gives you great joy. Your concept of self, and when you begin to discover an ultimate goal, all is the self. Therefore, there is nothing but happiness, whichever way you look at it. The world is Siyaram Maya Jagat. Brahma alone is real, and so forth. Put in a very simple way, all happiness you experience is just like this. Think of the sun as happiness. All reflected suns, they are nothing but sourced by the sun. You go after reflected sun, you are going into a wrong track. Even though you are dealing with reflections, don't fall into the trap. Practice reflection. Wherever happiness is coming through, it is your own essential nature. The reality in you is being imposed by mind, by ignorance on objects that are not real. So you have simply imagined happiness in objects. In fact, from this absolute point of view, the objects of the senses are the self. Just as waves, eddies, bubbles and foam are non-different from the ocean, in the same way, the objects are non-different from the self. That requires now profounder understanding. In dream, study the dream or bring the dream in your mind is easier to understand. In dream, what you consider yourself is not real you. That's a very fundamental error in your dream. Otherwise, it's easy life. You owe a lot of things and pay off your rent in the dream. So, I'm just joking, but the idea is all that you do in your dream has no substance. You didn't do it, you are just lying on your bed. Your identity in your dream is erroneous. The dream world is not real, and your dream concepts of gain and loss, that all these things are not real. But as long as you dream, the question does not bother you. What is real? Same situation is there in your daily life. Everyone wants to discover. So many things you have recovered, but self you have not discovered. And you are busy. Every breath you take is an urge of the self, urge of your soul to discover who am I. That's the real urge, instinctive urge in every soul. Everywhere the sun is shining, it is shimmering, it is shining, it's swirling. It's as if eager to discover I am the sun. Nothing in the world matches with it. A reflected sun has no match to be wedded to. It is Trishna that holds the senses together, just as a string holds the beads of a rosary together. Another way of saying, if senses are horses, the reins that control the horses, those reins are Trishna, craving, desire that has gone into uncontrolled state of intensity. And those strings are holding the senses. The horses, the senses, they are not free. They are simply driven, controlled by strings of desires, subtle desires. In brief, as long as You are dominated by craving. You are bound to be a slave to your senses. So, if you attain mastery over the senses, your craving will wane, will fade away. Or if you could bring about fading away of your craving, your senses will automatically become tame. Figure that out. It's a progressive movement. But just as when the string is broken, the beads disperse, in the same way when craving is renounced, the senses no longer create bondage for the soul. Same senses, if they are acting as tame horses led by your understanding, that type of function of the senses is not in any way restricting your goal. Rather, it is promoting your goal. When craving is renounced, the senses no longer create bondage. The vasana that sustains the ego and the senses is constituted of illusion, and therefore is eradicated by the sword of sankalpanash, sankalpatyag, renunciation of sankalpa. Sankalpa will to enjoy object in this context. In simple way, by renouncing desire, firstly, senses become tame. And next point to understand, when you renounce your desires, it implies your subconscious desires have become Shubha Vasana. Subconscious desires come in two categories, Shubha and Ashubha, pure and impure. As long as impure desires are there, senses will master you and you will not feel fulfilled. You will be always thirsty. You will be led by craving. But if you have Shubha Vasana, if your subtle desires are become purified, put in simple way to understand, easy, black cloud is like Malin Vasana, impure Vasana. So black cloud restricts the sun to a great degree. So, and refracts the sun. The moment blackness moves away from the cloud, and cloud becomes purified, Shubha Vasana, the rays begin to come through the cloud. If you want to understand more details, then you have to go into Raja Yoga. What makes Malin Vasana? Subtle impressions that gather in your unconscious based on 5 kleshas. Firstly, ignorance. Continue to enjoy being ignorant. And that goes on strengthening your ignorance. They become the source of all your Malin Vasana, impure desires. So, to be satisfied being ignorant, that's worst thing. Live a life to be awakened, vigorous, interesting, a life exploration, discovery, invention. That's ignorance. Turning away from anything that would put you in a right course. Ignorance plays a part in many aspects. You work in a job, ignorance can hurt you. Instead of taking the right pen to sign, you take the wrong pen. The doctor, ignorance will put into big troubles. You're fighting ignorance in every stage. Even in your kitchen, ignorance about spices. And continue to think of ignorance in so many ways. But nowhere ignorance is permitted. You can choose to be ignorant, then you are permitting the ignorance by your own reason. That is perfectly okay. Someone opens the door to you for a science of astronomy. There are lots of things to know, but all things to know have nothing to do with you sometimes. You need to understand what you should know, what you should not know. So even ignorance has to be handled by you. Next to handle is egoism. Asmita. Each egoistic experience creates impressions. You can fatten your ego, rajasic, tamasic type, more selfish. And that is egoism, creates malin vasana. Based on that impure ego, you develop concept of erroneous me and mine, and develop attachment and hatred based on that ego. That attachment becomes basis for malin vasana. Each idea, these things I must hold, they are the dearest ones, and so forth. All this is creating malin vasana. And things you hate also based on your ego is creating malin vasana. And when you have created a fabric for karma and results in your embodiment, you are identified with the body. Based on that embodiment, mind is constantly facing lots of insecurities of mortality. How long you have lived, when is your birthday celebration, how many candles you have to blow out. So the mind is constantly creating impressions. All these don't go in vain. They are always being recorded in your unconscious. 5 points are being recorded: your ignorance, your egoism, your attachment, your hatred, your fear of death. All these create klisht samskaras, impressions that are source of all pain. And these samskaras when we say they are like seeds deeply rooted in unconscious. When we say vasanas, seeds that have become sprouted. To such an extent they are coming out, showing their nose, tender nose, out of the earth. So much so that you become aware of your vasana without defining it, what it is. Look at a tender shoot coming out, you don't know what it is. But you look at it, it smells. Vasana is just smelling. First you smell the food cooking, then you are drawn to the kitchen. And then there is the person who cooks it. All this is an act of vas. Suvas, durvas, vas is same as smell. Vasana. But malina vasana your project is, malina vasana must move away. Impurity is not a reality, is a restriction in the flow of energy, the short-circuited energy. Darkness is not a reality. You are shutting your eyes, closing your door to light. You are not creating darkness. But unwittingly shut the door and the world has moved away. Say, oh darkness, I love you. You helped me to throw away all those. And that darkness spreads out as your anger, your hate, your worry, your anxiety, your stress, and all karmic movements are nourished by that darkness. That's the role of malina vasana. And in spiritual movement, malina vasana will be sublimated. Short-circuited energy is corrected, not fought against. It simply doesn't exist once correction is made. Anger, hate, greed, all these are not natural to you at all. You become natural. All divine qualities begin to develop in a spontaneous way. Central key of treating with malina vasana is called renunciation of sankalpa. Sankalpa means will to hold on to the world defined by all these five: ignorance, egoism, attachment, hatred, fear of death. That's the world one knows. And you create a sankalpa, may I be free, may I attain liberation, may I follow the path of bhakti. Oh God, give me shakti to follow the path of bhakti, to attain mukti, liberation. Once you have allowed your energy move in that direction, correction has started in your short-circuited aspect of energy, and they begin to gradually move away as if they never existed. O Chitta, talking to the whole mind stuff, you are the support of all these senses. Having discovered the falsity of your existence, merge in the taintless light of the self. So what will happen to Chitta if impure vasanas have been replaced by pure vasana? Chitta becomes a cloud that is shining more and more as light passes through, not knowing that as it shines, it is decaying, it's vanishing. But Chitta follows through and is no more. Mind is not needed for the soul to be relaxed or to feel happy about. Mind acts like a mirror. If you are too abnormal in your mind, you need to look at your mirror. Am I still there? Soul is constantly looking into the mirror of the mind for its existence, for all its feeling of being entertained or feeling of gaining ground. The mind provides all the possibility. From bondage to release, all the story is in and through the mind. That mind ultimately melts away, that Chitta moves away. So Malina Vasana replaced by pure Vasana. Malina Vasana sublimated. Pure Vasana developing, cloud becoming soft. Light shining more and more. Light alone is, the Vasana is not there. All this these are the sequence to understand. But understand also with maturity. Literally, things are not going away. But as you live, you gain increasing understanding that you are not confined to the level of senses. You are not confined in the level of your physical body. Your reality, the real I am, is same. When you go to sleep, all world moves away. And you are not missing anything. But even in sleep, you are holding on to your unconscious. The highest goal, even you don't hold on to your unconscious. That's the state of samadhi, state of revelation, realization. That's your goal. O Chitta, you are the support of all these senses. Having discovered the falsity of your existence, merge in the taintless light of the self. So when a cloud has become filled with light, as if the cloud merges in the light. And this is the subtle point behind Kirtan people sing, Jyoti se Jyoti milado. Take this light and unite it with the light. Light meeting with light. What a delight. Next section, 53. Sri Uddalaka continued his reflections. Limited objects composed of earth, water, air, and fire can become fragrant when treated with fragrance. But the self, which is unlimited, cannot be rendered fragrant. All the poetic language, all that it implies. If you live in the world of senses, then you are experiencing good and evil, foul smell and fragrance, ups and downs, gain and loss. That's the nature of the world of senses. The nature of the world that experienced through your mind and senses. And that world you cannot secure because everything can affect it. You have built a wonderful house, but it's not invulnerable to many things that can happen. A little dust storm and your colorings of the house go away very quickly. So all things in the world that you gain, they are subject to colors. Good, bad, young, it grows, it decays, changes occur, they are all in a broad sense, they are changing colors. The elements go on creating changes. As long as you are dominated by malina vasana, you have no possibility, you are helpless. You are living in a world where nothing can maintain its existence. All things are a kind of magic. Through one angle of your mind, it looks wonderful. A little change in the angle and it's no longer interesting. And many details. Mind goes on collecting lots of negative impressions day by day. Goes on correcting the negative way by positive, but not sufficiently positive. The relative movement. And what is being highlighted? That the real I am is not colored by vasanas. That's what Uddalaka is now talking to the vasanas. You vasanas cannot color. Because I'm not slave to those elements. Have attained Bhuta Jaya, conquer the elements, control all the chakras. So, again, that's statement I'm giving in a figurative way. If you are saying that, you have not done it. In other words, if you have come to your own nature, who am I? That state of your essential nature is completely untouched, untarnished by elements and all factors that create changes. The innermost self is not subject to changes designed by karmas. Soul is always existing on the basis of karmas. Therefore, changes occur every moment. No two moments are exactly alike. And you are constantly dependent upon the changes. But if you begin to develop spiritual progress, you begin to turn to this source within you, who am I? Your reflected I is shaking, but the real I is the sun. How lead your mind to understand this shift from reflected to the real? And the understanding, what will that understanding do to your mind? And how can you handle it? Figure that out. But that's all implied in your spiritual progress. The vasanas do not belong to me. The reflection of the self in the mind has created the illusion of vasanas on the basis of sense perceptions. The jiva, individual soul, is a reflected self, where it is reflecting in the mind. Just like the sun, you need a pot and there is water in it, and in that water you see the sun reflected. Pot and water is created by karma. You got embodiment, so you have a body like a pot, and a mind becomes like a water in it. And whenever you say, this is me and I did it, is a reflected one that's shouting. And all the story of your world, vast world, past, present and future, and world within the world, all this is based on that reflected self. So while for the reflected self there is constant change, the real self is ever the same. And all the stories of the reflected self are like the stories of your dream. They don't matter. Figure that out. These are very profound way of presenting Vedanta. But all this does not change your daily. They are not meant to give you a sudden jerk, but a change in your understanding. Same things. Instead of creating negative vasanas, impure vasanas, they can begin to create pure vasanas by change of your attitude, change of your insight. That's why it says, Sabko sanamati de Bhagavan. Oh Bhagavan, give good understanding. Once the understanding has changed, the angle has changed, you have all the resources to enjoy the world, grow out of the world, say goodbye to the world, and stay shining. So the reflection of the self in the mind has created all these illusions. Just as children imagine ghosts in the shadows of the dusk, even so the mind has imagined. The mind has created malin vasanas, and malin vasanas support all experiences of the world. I am pure consciousness. Now good news. The objects that are thought of by my mind during waking state do not touch me, who am beyond the mind. Also I am untouched by the experiences of dream. In fact, I am beyond waking, dream and deep sleep states. That I am. That's the big bell that must ring. And with this I will conclude. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urvarukung Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyama Mritat Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Hari Om Tat Sat.